There's an international court in The Hague that was created in 2002 called the International Criminal Court, and this is what it's designated to do according to BBC. Prosecute and bring to justice those responsible for the worst crimes: genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. The court has global jurisdiction. It is a court of last resort, intervening only when national authorities cannot or will not prosecute. Now, if you care about human rights, this court should be absolutely important to you. But with that being said, there are some fair criticisms of the court. Namely, it lacks teeth because it doesn't have a police force, so they can't arrest war criminals themselves in the event a country doesn't want to comply with the result of their investigation. Also, they receive funding from member countries, so in the event they pay too much attention to one country in particular, and that country doesn't like that, they could potentially lose a significant source of funding. They've also been accused of being biased against Africa, since they've only prosecuted leaders in Africa and no one from the West. But even with all of that being said, the court itself is still fundamentally important, because we need that failsafe. If one country doesn't want to hold their officials accountable who committed atrocities, genocide, war crimes, then we need some type of international institution that can potentially hold them accountable. And certainly the court needs to be improved. It needs more power. But it's still important nonetheless, even if it's not perfect. So the question is, why hasn't the International Criminal Court prosecuted American war criminals? We have tons of them. George W. Bush, Dick Cheney. Well, the reason is because the United States is one of the few countries that has not signed on to the Rome Statute, which established the court, and as a result, the court doesn't have jurisdiction over us, and we don't recognize their authority. And the reason for this, as BBC explains, is during negotiations, the U.S. argued that its soldiers might be the subject of politically motivated or frivolous prosecutions. Various safeguards were introduced, and Bill Clinton did eventually sign the treaty in one of his last acts as president, but it was never ratified by Congress. The Bush administration was adamantly opposed to the court and to any dilution of U.S. sovereignty in criminal justice, and the U.S. threatened to pull its troops out of the UN force in Bosnia unless they were given immunity from prosecution by the ICC. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people view the court as lacking teeth and lacking legitimacy overall internationally is because the United States chose not to sign on to it. But why did the U.S. not sign on to it? I think that's pretty obvious. Bush didn't want to join the ICC because he could literally himself be prosecuted, as could Dick Cheney. So, of course, he's not going to tie his hands and tie the U.S.'s hands to an international institution that could one day lock him up, right? So that's why he didn't want to join the ICC. But what about Obama? What was Obama's stance towards the International Criminal Court? Well, Obama also opted to not join the ICC, but from time to time, he'd release these flowery statements saying, that the U.S. would be willing to assist the ICC in certain investigations, and essentially, he was paying lip service to individuals that wanted the U.S. to join the court. But overall, he refused to join because, like Bush, he's another American leader that could very well be investigated and ultimately prosecuted. Look at the drone program that killed countless innocent civilians. That was ramped up by Obama unilaterally. So there's this disincentive for American presidents to not join the court, because if they join the court, then they could very well be held accountable one day. Now, when we get to Donald Trump, I'm assuming that he probably had no idea about the court or even heard about the court prior to being elected, but his administration has certainly changed with regard to their position on the court, and not in a good way. And in a speech at the Federalist Society, National Security Advisor John Bolton actually threatened to prosecute International Criminal Court prosecutors in the United States and literally ban them from entering the United States. And I'm going to show you a video that kind of gives us a snapshot of this administration's hostility towards the court.
In November of 2017, The ICC prosecutor requested authorization to investigate alleged war crimes committed by U.S. service members and intelligence professionals during the war in Afghanistan, an investigation neither Afghanistan nor any other state party to the Rome Statute requested. Literally any day now, the ICC may announce the start of a formal investigation against these American patriots who voluntarily signed on to go into harm's way to protect our nation, our homes, and our families in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. The ICC prosecutor has requested to investigate these Americans for alleged detainee abuse, and perhaps more, an utterly unfounded, unjustifiable investigation. Today, on the eve of September the 11th, I want to deliver a clear and unambiguous message on behalf of the President of the United States. The United States will use any means necessary to protect our citizens and those of our allies from unjust prosecution by this illegitimate court. We will not cooperate with the ICC. We will provide no assistance to the ICC, and we certainly will not join the ICC. We will let the ICC die on its own. After all, for all intents and purposes, the ICC is already dead to us.
For all intents and purposes, the ICC is already dead to us. Wow. So, obviously, we're not going to be joining the ICC so long as Donald Trump is president, right? But what's going on? Why is John Bolton so hostile towards the court? Well, he referenced Afghanistan. And as The Intercept's Murtaza Hussain explains, recent statements from the Trump administration suggest that the United States is now preparing to go to war against the ICC itself, motivated largely by an effort to silence investigations into alleged American war crimes committed in Afghanistan, as well as alleged crimes committed by Israel during the 2014 war in the Gaza Strip. Because it involves U.S. officials themselves at the center of the campaign against the ICC, is a 2016 report by ICC prosecutors that deals in part with the war in Afghanistan. That report alleges the commission of widespread crimes by the Taliban and Afghan government forces, but the report also makes allegations of serious crimes committed by U.S. military forces and the CIA, including torture, outrages upon personal dignity, and rape. The crimes in question appear to have been related to detention programs run in Afghanistan during the early years of the U.S. occupation. While the report does not name the individuals responsible nor the victims, it indicates that there are dozens of cases in which torture, cruel treatment, and sexual assault were committed by American soldiers and CIA officers in Afghanistan from 2003 to 2004. The report also states that the alleged crimes were not the abuses of a few isolated individuals, adding that there is a reasonable basis to believe that alleged crimes were committed in furtherance of a policy or policies aimed at eliciting information through the use of interrogation techniques involving cruel or violent methods which would support U.S. objectives in the conflict in Afghanistan. Given long-standing U.S. refusals to cooperate with ICC investigations, it's unlikely that the 2016 document, a preliminary report from the prosecutor's office, would have succeeded in bringing U.S. officials to trial at The Hague. Bolton's campaign thus seems intended on solidifying the fact that the United States is free of international norms on human rights conduct, with those who even investigate its actions subject to threat. So, make no mistake about it, John Bolton is sending a very clear message to the rest of the world. The United States is above the law. We are allowed to go into any country we want, torture individuals, kill innocent civilians, commit genocide, rape, and if you so much as mention the possibility that American soldiers and CIA officials may be culpable, legally and guilty, we're going to attack you and threaten you. In other words, the United States is above the law. We can do anything we want, and there's not a goddamn thing that you can do about it. And John Bolton knows that really the ICC can't do anything about it. And not only are they saying, we're not going to cooperate, they're saying, if any of your ICC prosecutors come to the U.S., we're going to hold you legally responsible. We're going to prosecute you. But also, at the same time, as they openly are hostile towards the ICC, what do they say? Oh, well, the United States cares about human rights. It's a joke at this point. It's a complete joke. It couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, the United States is openly hostile towards anyone that protects human rights because actions speak louder than words. We might say we care about human rights, but of course we don't. Now, why is John Bolton so personally offended at the prospect of the ICC investigating war crimes that the United States committed? Because, of course, he could also, like Obama, like Bush, like Dick Cheney, he could be prosecuted by the ICC. And also, he wants wars with pretty much every other country. So in the event he gets his wish and he gets Donald Trump to invade Iran or North Korea, well, he doesn't want to make sure that his hands are tied and that he can commit as much war crimes as possible and never have to worry about legal consequences. So make no mistake about it. This is all about self-preservation. The United States leaders, they don't want to sign on to the ICC because they don't want to be responsible themselves. So, anyone who does this, they can't continue to say that they care about human rights with a straight face because it's a complete and utter joke at this point.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.